Today at the museum. At the race bays, a 1960s Bedford van puts the brakes on volunteer mechanic John's hopes of getting it up and running.
Just as we left it, I was hoping the fairies might have fixed it. Looks like we've still got to do it.
Over on Britain's first racetrack, the world's first ever motorised Triumph rides for the first time in 80 years.
That's amazing. It's a historic moment. It's a privilege to be here to see this.
And I come to the museum to relive one of the most amazing experiences of my life. Good morning. I have a boarding pass. Stepping back on board the supersonic marvel that is Concorde.
We are now departing for Washington. Our flight time will be just 3 hours and 40 minutes.
From supersonic planes, to record-breaking cars, to phenomenal bikes. No vehicle at Brooklands is too big or too small, too precious or too humble to escape the technical TLC of the museum's army of volunteer mechanics.
Take this round by the race bays, I think.
And today over at the race bays, a rather temperamental van of the people
Hello, Les. Is there any chance you can give us a bit of a hand here, mate?
is demanding the attention of volunteers John Phillips and Les Harvey. This is a 1960 Bedford CA van. It took the passengers and crew across the apron to aircraft like the British Airways VC-10 built at Brooklands.
In fact, if you look at any of the old films of the 1960s, you'll always see a Bedford CA somewhere in the background.
Although the Bedford was a very popular model, few of the ones used by airlines exist today. This one was donated to the museum in 2006, and with Brooklands' strong aviation history, it's only fitting that this iconic van calls the museum its home. Brooklands wants it up and running again as part of their weekly displays, but there are a few things to sort out first.
The poor old Bedford, it's been standing for so long over lockdown, the brakes have seized. Let's just take the wheel off. Put that over there. This side has seized absolutely solid.
Old vehicles like the Bedford van have drum brakes. Friction is created by a set of shoes or pads pressing against a rotating cylinder, creating stopping power.
Sometimes the springs jump and completely disappear.
And the shoes are operated by hydraulic-powered pistons.
We're off to the workshop now to strip down the wheel cylinder and see how we get on.
And it doesn't take long for John and Les to get a better idea of what they're dealing with.
You see how it's rusty all round the edge? The pistons inside, they're seized solid as well. So we've got to try and get them out.
The pistons are supposed to push against the drum of the wheel to slow it down. If they're seized, the brakes are useless.
Nice and careful. There is the first piston. See how the edge of it is all corroded, but we're about to clean all that off.
A career as an electrician set John up with the right problem-solving skills he needs for working on the Bedford.
As a young apprentice, you always needed to keep a car running to get to work. So usually you were fixing it over the weekend to get to work on Monday, or you were catching a lift with another mate. So you did learn all about cars. With hydraulics, it's very important that you don't contaminate the system with anything other than hydraulic fluid. Now that's definitely looking a lot different. You compare it with the other one.
But after a careful inspection, John realises it's a bigger job than they'd hoped. The master cylinder's worn out and is going to need replacing.
That's a pity because we were getting on quite well today.
John will have to order a new cylinder and hope that it's enough to get this van up and running again.
Right, I've had enough today.
So what? I'm going home.
going to go home for a cup of tea.
Bye.
One of the aircraft the Bedford van serviced was the VC-10, made by aircraft manufacturer Vickers at Brooklands. The company merged with several others in 1960 to form BAC, the British Aircraft Corporation. And of all the aircraft they were to produce, their most famous was undoubtedly Concorde. 30 years ago, I was lucky enough to win a competition to actually fly on it. And I'm excited to have been let out of the voiceover suite today to come to Brooklands to step on board their supersonic star attraction once again. Good morning. I believe I have a boarding pass. As a boy growing up under Heathrow flight paths, it was always Concorde that made me stop in my tracks and look up at the sky.
Would you like to have a look in the cockpit?
I'd love to. Today, Carol Cornwall and Jeanette Hartley are going to help me relive one of the most amazing travel experiences I've ever had. There are so many buttons and switches and dials. It's extraordinary, but it is amazing that they remember what all the buttons did. It's amazing how small it is as well, isn't it? I mean, you have 3 people in here as well. Incredible.
Plus a visitor, and we had a 5th seat just along here, so we could get 5 into this cockpit.
Small admission, this isn't my first time flying up front. It's been exactly 30 years since I was last in Concorde. We were invited to come up to the cockpit. I was determined to stay in here for as long as possible, and I got asked to leave, rather embarrassingly, by the captain. I said, so what is the tensile stress on the fuselage at takeoff? Was the point where the captain said, do you know what, there are other people who want to come in here. I went, yeah, fair enough. So I got busted at that point. Brooklands Concorde is a particularly special one. Known as Delta Golf, she was one of 2 production aircraft built to help develop the final design of future Concordes, and was also used for testing new routes.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome on board this British Airways Concorde. We are now departing for Washington. Our flight time will be just 3 hours and 40 minutes at a speed of 1,350 miles per hour.
But those are really short flying times, aren't they? I mean, it's...
Less than half of the subsonic flight times, yes.
To think of 1970, think of the kind of cars we had in 1970, yes. Or to think that we had a supersonic jet that was taking us across the Atlantic in 3 hours is extraordinary, isn't it?
That's right.
The word Concorde means agreement in French and reflects the incredible collaboration between the UK and France in the creation of this aircraft. And amazingly, without Brooklands, it may never have come to fruition. It was on the Brooklands site in 1962 that the UK and France signed on the dotted line, giving the go-ahead for Concorde to go into production. Once manufacturing began, almost 1/3 of every aircraft was built at Brooklands before being assembled at Filton or Toulouse. You know, being able to kind of fly to, particularly to America and back in a day, is it true that some people just basically flew there, had their meetings and flew back?
They did. There was a special meeting room at Kennedy Airport where they could hold their meetings, sign their contracts, whatever, and then they'd fly back on the same aircraft. We left at 10:30 in the morning. We were in New York at 9 o'clock the same morning, so we arrived an hour and a half before leaving London, you see. You have breakfast at home, you have breakfast on the Concorde, and you have breakfast in New York.
3 breakfasts?
If you wanted to.
Oh my goodness, it was a 3 breakfast flight. 3 breakfasts is my kind of morning. What an epic plane and what amazing memories. With the museum's 32 acres of exhibits keeping the visitors busy, Director of Exhibitions and Heritage, Alex Patterson, is on a very special mission.
I've been let out of the office today and I've come to see a company that specialises in making miniature cars, in particular the Bugatti.
Built by Italian-born Frenchman Ettore Bugatti, the Bugatti Type 35 is considered by many to be the most successful racing car of all time.
Bugatti has a rich and long association with Brooklands, particularly in the 1920s and 30s, when drivers like Malcolm Campbell really made their name in Bugatti cars, setting records around the circuit as well.
Bugatti stopped making the Type 35 back in 1931, and today there are very few originals left, and the ones that do exist are expensive and sought-after collector's pieces.
In the centenary year of the first British Grand Prix, I've been really wanting to get a T35 on display at Brooklands. Unfortunately, these cars are rare and elusive, so what better than having an actual-size Bugatti than a baby Bugatti?
In 1926, Ettore decided to build a half-scale, fully electric Type 35 for his youngest son Roland's 4th birthday. What Ettore had intended as a one-off present was so popular with the customers that saw it when they picked up their full-sized cars that he spotted a business opportunity. The Bugatti Baby went into production with around 500 made and sold between 1927 and 1936. And just under 100 years later, the Baby Bugatti has been reborn. And one of these incredible scale model Type 35s will soon be at Brooklands, thanks to its new owner, who's generously offered to keep it there so that visitors can enjoy and admire it. And manager Ben Taylor is more than happy to show off these amazing mini marvels.
Hello, Ben.
Hello.
Here she is.
She's a beauty.
It is absolutely stunning, and the sun is shining on her as well.
It may be small, but these cars are no toys. They've been scaled to 3/4 size of the original T35, a tight fit for an adult.
Obviously, iconic Type 35 boat tail. We've actually repurposed the fuel cap here, so we're using now a power point.
Oh, that's clever.
Nice little touch.
That's very nice.
The Baby Bugatti, like the original scaled-down T35, has a rear-wheel drive electric powertrain, providing 13.4 horsepower. But now, with upgraded hydraulic brakes, all fed by removable lithium batteries.
So we have what we believe to be one of the world's smallest quick-release steering wheels. Fantastic. So obviously it makes it much easier to get in and out, and also adds a little bit of theatre to it as well. So moving on to the dashboard, so we've got the turned aluminium dashboard as per the original Type 35. The original dials have either been replicated or repurposed. Oil gauge is no longer relevant in an electric car, so instead we've replaced that with NG and power meters.
Not only that, the new Baby Bugatti has regenerative braking. When you brake, the kinetic energy produced goes back into the battery, charging it.
Well, that all sounds amazing, Ben, but big burning question.
Sure.
Can I have a drive?
I think you should. Let's do it.
Okay, right.
Although not road legal, the Baby Bugatti can reach its top speed of 42 miles per hour in just seconds.
Wow, this is really responsive.
Being so low to the ground makes it feel much faster.
Never driven an electric vehicle before, I'll be honest, apart from, a Dodgem and a milk float. So this is a completely different experience.
The next time Alex sees the Baby Bugatti will be at Brooklands, where its new owner will keep it.
There we go.
Christ, it's not light, is it?
Brooklands is all about firsts. It's home to the world's first purpose-built racetrack, built in 1907, and has seen cutting-edge vehicles through the decades race on it. But the first ever motorbike to race and win around the famous banking was a 3.5 horsepower Triumph, up against a 5 horsepower Bickford back in 1908. Triumphs continued to dominate at the Brooklands track, with bikes like the Triumph Wicksteed and Freddie Clarke's T80 shattering records and awing the crowds. Today, Triumph is the UK's biggest motorbike brand. In Essex, Dick Shepherd has an incredible collection of over 400 Triumph bikes. But his latest discovery is the rarest of the lot, and is destined to send shockwaves through the motorbike world. He wants to bring it back to life, to ride on it on the historic racetrack at Brooklands.
Well, this is the 1901 Triumph. It's the very first Triumph motorcycle ever built. Someone contacted the museum where we've got a lot of our rare Triumphs and said, was I interested in buying it? And we checked it all out. In the condition that it was in, it was lovely to find. It was probably one of the most complete bikes I think I've ever come across, and especially being that early, you don't expect it.
Triumph was started in Coventry by German immigrant Siegfried Bettmann in 1885, importing and exporting bicycles. 16 years later, in 1901, he built his first motorized bicycle, incredibly, this very bike, the Triumph 01, before announcing it to the world in 1902.
It's got all the original features on it still. This is a unique part to the early Triumph bikes. It's got a steering lock. You push that round and it locks the steering from turning, so you can get on the bike without having to hold the handlebars. And this has got a lovely little bell on the front that as you pull this lever, the wheel comes down, and as you're going forwards, it turns the wheel and it just runs on the bell, which is quite nice.
The bike was cutting edge for its time and is essentially a push bike with a 2.5 horsepower engine attached to it, made by a Belgian company, Minerva.
They would make the engine and they would make the fuel tank, and you bought it as a kit. Each manufacturer, they would have made that tank to fit your frame and the engine as well.
The Triumph 01 was a hit, and by 1907 Triumph motorcycles were selling in their thousands, now with a 453cc engine.
As you pedal the bike, the actual pulley on the back here drives this pulley to start the engine. The belt really just runs the engine from the back wheel.
Dick has been lovingly restoring the bike with a couple of necessary upgrades. But there's one small problem. Dick hasn't been able to get a new drive belt.
It's certainly a hard piece to get right because that was missing when we got the bike.
In most modern engines, this belt would be rubber, but back in 1901, things were a little more organic.
Originally, that was made of twisted cow's gut, and obviously we can't use that proceed today, so we're going to make it using twisted leather.
Without a drive belt, the Triumph 01 isn't going anywhere. Dick needs to have one custom made, and fortunately he's got the perfect man for the job, and he works very nearby. He's meeting James Glover, who makes leather interiors for vehicles and has worked on many projects for Dick over the years.
Right, we need to make this drive belt here. Originally it was made of twisted cow's gut.
Okay.
But obviously we can't use that today.
I haven't got any in stock.
Are you sure? You've
Definitely
run out?
Not. No,
okay.
Definitely no cow's gut. And what sort of diameter are we looking at?
I reckon we probably want to go at 12mm, so it grips on the pulleys.
Okay.
We want to try and get a twist into the leather rather than like an overlay, if you can.
Okay, so like a spiral or
that's
a helix
right.
sort
Yeah,
of thing,
yeah, that's
okay.
right. Yeah, yeah. This is actually the last bit of the bike.
Okay, no pressure then.
So you've got no pressure,
okay,
James.
jolly good.
You're doing the most important piece of this bike. I'll leave this with you, and I'll see you in about an hour then. That'd be all right?
Yeah.
Or would you like a bit longer?
24 hours would be nice.
Right, thanks very much, James.
Thanks, Dick.
I'll see you in about an hour.
Cool. See you soon. Right.
Challenge set. James gets to work.
To be honest with you, I've never done this actual thing before, so we'll just have to see as we go, but I'll do my best.
The original cow gut used would have been strong and flexible.
Right, I'm just going to hang this up here, because it'll be much easier to get the glue all over it.
As a substitute, James uses a length of rubber tubing, to which he's gluing leather strips that will add the grip the belt needs to turn the engine.
Right, I think that's going to work.
He then measures the thickness to make sure it's the 12mm diameter Dick requires.
OK, we've got just over 10, so I think I'm going to have to go again. I'm going to make it a triple layer.
A little more leather work and job's a good 'un. And just in time as Dick is back to collect it.
James, how'd you get on?
Oh, hey Dick. Yeah, all right, I think. I've had to put 3 layers on it.
No problem.
Just to bring it up to the 12mm.
That looks lovely, mate.
Yeah, I've put a little bit of oil on it just to give it a bit of protection.
Lovely. Lovely. But yeah, that's lovely, mate. Well done.
Thanks, Dick.
Thanks very much.
Cheers, take
Bye-bye.
care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
The belt may be complete, but this is uncharted territory. Dick has to hope that it's good enough to get the Triumph's engine running again if he's to fulfill his dream of riding it around Brooklands' hallowed track. I'm on board Brooklands Concorde, reliving the VIP experience passengers received on this incredible feat of engineering.
Concorde is a complex piece of machinery. When she's ready to fly, she'll fly. Nothing must be left to chance.
The joint venture between the UK and France cost over £1 billion in development and estimated production costs of at least £500 million. Once on board, the experience was 5-star, including the food.
Do you like a menu, sir?
Ah, love the menu.
You're going to Washington today, is that all right?
Fine by me. I'll have one of each of these, please.
You will.
Thank you very much. I might be asleep at Washington. Meals were always of the highest restaurant quality, and chefs including Michel Roux helped put together many of the menus.
Here is your chicken, sir.
Wow, lovely.
Bon appétit.
Merci beaucoup.
Je vous en prie. He speaks French very well, I think.
I wasn't actually expecting to get a real meal. This one has been prepared from a 1980s Concorde menu, just like the one on the flight I won in the prize draw. I'm having smoked salmon and caviar, roasted chicken with oyster mushrooms and sautéed potatoes, followed by pear and calvados sponge with crème chantilly.
How is your meal, Sanjeev?
It was great. It was really, really great. If anything, it's better than I remember it, actually. Even though... What was it like as an experience for you as crew? I mean, did you get used to it?
No, never. I wouldn't have swapped my time on here for anything. It was always exciting, every day.
Just imagine this cabin was full of Mick Jaggers and Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor. Is that the truth?
Absolutely. It was very unusual not to have at least one famous name on the passenger list, and sometimes two or more.
The only one that made my knees go weak.
Oh, hello.
Coming out of New York on the early one, and these sleepy black eyes looked at me and said, "Good morning," and my knees completely went. And that was David Essex.
David Essex!
Yeah. He really was the pin-up boy.
I was very lucky to do a royal flight with the Queen and Prince Philip, 1979.
Wow.
That was a great honour.
Concorde was retired in 2003,
That's right.
wasn't it? How did you feel?
We were heartbroken. It's an aircraft that produces a loyalty like no other, a camaraderie like no other. And the one thing that I miss more than anything else, listening to the noise and the thrust of takeoff.
Concorde's last flight was an emotional one for everyone involved.
You remember 3 Concordes came in, one after the other, and thousands of people went to Heathrow to see this spectacle. We couldn't bear it. We stayed at home, watched on the television and commiserated with cups of tea.
Such an amazing part of history. How amazing that we've still got these kind of sort of planes here that people can visit. And that's amazing, isn't it? Jeanette, Carol, this has been such a treat. Thank you so much for giving me an extra dollop of Concorde and being allowed to reminisce with you.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sanjeev.
I mean, that was the most extraordinary experience. And what's really lovely is that, you know, the experience that I had is as close to being replicated as possible here. So it's great. I'm going to bring my son to it.
Hello, Les. Is there any chance you can give us a bit of a hand here, mate?
Yeah, certainly, no problem.
2 weeks ago, John and his colleagues went through the tricky process of stripping and cleaning the brake drum of an old Bedford CA vehicle. After a second inspection of the parts, John realised it was actually the master brake cylinder that was at fault, as no brake fluid was making it through to convert pressure on the brake pedal to the hydraulic pressure needed to stop the van. The parts have arrived, and today he and fellow volunteer Mike Lagg
They were very quick with the postage.
They were, weren't they? Are assembling them ready to fit on the van.
We've got the parts, so you can see the picture in the workshop manual so that we get the parts in the right order. These are all going to go inside the master cylinder. It's quite fiddly getting all the seals back in. So if we put that in there, line that up.
First, a seal is fitted.
Now, we're going to see if we can drop that down inside, and it's got to lay flat at the bottom of the master cylinder.
Next, a valve needs to be positioned on top of the seal.
this tiny little valve, that's got to end up facing that way.
John has a clever technique for getting the valve in.
We're going to try it this way, which is a good idea. That's going to go all the way down to the bottom. I'm holding the spring.
Finally, he places a seal on the other end.
Pushing it down very gently so that it comes into contact with the spring. This one is the secondary seal, which stops the fluid leaking out of the master cylinder.
Once John has got the fiddly components in place, he uses a special clip to hold it all together.
The circlip has expanded out into a groove and it's locked everything into place. What we should find is now simulating the action of someone pressing the brake pedal and it's returning under the spring pressure.
It's time to get back to the van and try out the newly assembled parts.
Just as we left it, I was hoping the fairies might have fixed it. Looks like we've still got to do it.
Today, John is working with fellow volunteers Mike and Ian Wybrow in the hope that they can get the van up and running as part of Brooklands displays.
Can you manage, Mike, underneath?
Yeah, not too bad at the moment.
With the new brake cylinder successfully in place, John tests it to make sure the brake fluid is passing through the cylinder, forcing the shoes against the drum to provide stopping power.
Do it and see if there's any feel in the pedal. Right, you can see the fluid coming out into the clear tube now. And open and close. Pump again. We are actually beginning to get a bit of a pedal now. Close. A half reliable brake pedal. So, which is much better than no brake pedal at all. So I think we're getting there. We're on the home straight.
And with a little more teamwork and a lot more pumping, John seems satisfied.
That feels solid as a rock. I'm really pleased with that. About an inch of movement and that pedal feels absolutely solid.
The van can now join the other Brooklands vehicles out on parade.
Let's see if we can start the engine and go off for a test drive. Oh, nearly.
Or maybe not. Triumph collector Dick Shepherd is preparing to ride a truly remarkable bike on Brooklands' historic racetrack, the Triumph 01, the manufacturer's first ever model. But before he does, he needs to fit the new bespoke drive belt he's had made.
This is an aluminium joiner that's got umbrella attachments on either end. You can't pull it apart because it's like a knife edge and it's a slightly bigger diameter than what the inside of the tube is, so it locks in and stops it coming apart. That should be it. Yeah, this is looking good. The joint's gone well together. Yeah, I think we've got the right tension. I think we're okay now. Yeah, I wanted to bring it back to Brooklands, being the oldest race circuit in the world, because it's the oldest known Triumph. So I thought they'd go well together. Yeah, I think we're ready now to get her on the track and give her a run.
Seeing his historic first Triumph running where so many of its successors have raced and won over the years will be a big moment for Dick. David Morrison, Brooklands Heritage Engineering Manager, has volunteered to help him get the bike running.
Morning, Nick.
Morning, how are you?
Good, thanks, good. What have we got today?
This is the very first Triumph ever built, 1901.
It's literally a motorised push bike, isn't it?
That's right.
By and large.
That's right. It's been in the same family since 1937. And we've got a letter confirming this was the very first bike ever built by Triumphs.
Fantastic. Very rare we get ones coming here to run that are actually older than the track itself, so it can be fantastic to see it today.
The 120-year-old engine works rather differently to those of modern-day motorbikes.
Unfortunately, we can't get the original feel for it, so we're using clutch and brake cleaner.
Right, okay.
It's got a really good vapour because this has got a surface carburettor which is built inside the fuel tank.
Right.
The carburettor's actually here, and it literally runs on vapour.
Right.
It holds about 2 litres.
And how far would that let the bike run for?
Hundreds of miles. You've got a fuel tap here,
Yeah.
and what you do is you drip feed the fuel into the surface carburettor.
Okay.
Then here there's a brass rod,
Right.
and you set that and you keep it on that marker as you're running. So obviously the faster you're going, you'll allow a bit more fuel.
The rider controls the fuel manually as they go by pressing a button which lets air into the tank, mixing with the fuel.
So you really had to understand the combustion process as well as being able to ride the bike to balance everything.
Yeah, you've got to balance everything out when you're riding it. It's quite a tricky thing, but this here, this is your fuel gauge.
Okay.
Obviously, once you'd filled up the main fuel tank, you'd know how far you've got to stop before you turn round. So you'd do it on time, roughly.
Okay, yeah.
And as you can see, this is even got Triumph on the watch, look.
Brilliant.
So it's quite a unique little thing, you know.
That's fantastic, yeah.
Right, we're nearly ready to start. We'll put the ignition key in.
Okay. So you can start it on the stand?
Yeah, we'll just start it, warm it up on the stand.
Okay. Okay.
We'll just put the decompressor on.
Yep.
That takes the load off the cylinder.
As the engine fires up, the new bespoke drive belt is put through its paces.
Well, I think we're just warm her up a little bit.
Yeah.
We'll just find the best position.
Yeah.
Right, we're ready.
As Dick pedals, the early engine kicks into life for the first time in 80 years. The bike that launched a world-famous brand is back running once more.
That's amazing. It's a historic moment. It's a privilege to be here to see this. And we're here to see it on the Brooklands track. It doesn't get better than this. How was the track? It's a little bit bumpy, isn't it?
It's a little bit bumpy, but yeah, it's an amazing little thing.
The first Triumph motorbike has held its own on the first British racetrack. And so too has the handmade drive belt.
Oh, that's a short run, but how quick do you think you were going on there?
I think we was probably doing 15 to 18 miles an hour.
All right.
I think if you was on a straight run, you possibly could hit 20 mile an hour.
Thanks for bringing the bike out. I really appreciate it. It's been fantastic to see it running.
No problem.
Good.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
To actually ride the very first Triumph ever built on Brooklands circuit was absolutely awesome. It's actually older than the circuit, which was even better, you know? So to think this circuit wasn't here when the bike was built is something special.
This particular car, built in 1931.
Several weeks ago, museum volunteer John was given the task of fixing the brakes on an old Bedford CA aircraft crew van. His hard work ended frustratingly when the engine then wouldn't start. Not one to give up easily, John is back for another go, this time with volunteer Ian. And he's trying another tack.
We're going to just take the float chamber and see if we're getting any petrol into the carburettor. And as you can see in there, absolutely bone dry, no petrol in it at all.
With no fuel getting to the carburettor, John suspects there may be a blockage in the fuel line. All he has to do now is find it. Turning the engine over pumps a little bit of fuel from the tank.
Okay, right. Looking at in the jar is possibly some muck that's washed out and we've caught it.
But then Ian comes up with a suggestion.
I think we might have to look at the fuel line.
I think you're right.
They drop a plastic tube into the petrol tank to check the fuel is okay.
Ah, there it is. Oh, look at the funny colour of it.
Yeah, I know what I think it looks like, John.
Rust brown, I think is the word.
No wonder it's not running.
That fuel should be virtually clear. Well, that indicates that it's severely contaminated
And that could be a major issue. The Bedford won't start with contaminated fuel in the tank. Perhaps John has finally found the problem.
We're going to see if there is a tap underneath the tank there. If that allows the petrol to come out, we'll drain it once and then get some fresh fuel, put in, give it a good shake, drain it again, and we'll keep draining it until it runs out as clear as we can make it. The only alternative is to actually take the tank right off, but you know, that is a bit too big.
Despite the vast array of skills of John, Les and Mike, a bigger problem with the fuel tank could prove beyond the museum's resources.
That's a gallon of fresh fuel we put in there.
By fleshing out the petrol tank, John hopes he can get rid of any old debris that has accumulated, which may be causing all the blockages and stopping the engine from starting properly.
If you look at the colour in there, it's an absolute rusty yellow, which shows the fuel is in very poor state.
Just one more time.
We drained the fuel, put the fuel back in the filler, and watched it flush through several times until we got a lot of the muck out.
Now it's time to test the petrol coming out of the fuel line again.
Turn it over when you're ready.
Right, okay, lovely. There we are, look at the colour of that. You can almost transparent. That does look a lot more promising.
Oh, look at that, look.
What more can we say?
Finally, after all their hard work and perseverance, it looks like Ian's idea of flushing out the fuel tank has done the job. Now to find out for sure.
Oh.
All they need now are some plucky volunteers brave enough to try out the newly vamped brakes on the Bedford CA.
Is there any chance you guys can come for a test drive with us? Add a little bit of bolt.
Turning on the charm there, John.
Mind your head as you get in. You all right, Debs? Are you all ready in the back there? Righto, here we go. Right, now when we get on the straight, I'm going to do a brake test. So just brace yourselves. Feels good. Right, going round again.
Don't get carried away, John.
The brakes are nice and firm, they're not pulling, and the engine is running as well, which is such a relief. So we're now going to put her away and quit while the going is good.
After a fantastic morning on board Concorde,
Tamily, hi.
Really good to meet you.
Oh, thank you. It's such an honour to be here.
I'm meeting Tamily Newbury, museum director, who says she has something else planned for me.
How do you fancy a drive around the track in one of our sports cars?
Seriously?
Yeah.
I love it.
Excellent.
I love it. This is just fantastic.
So this is the Le Mans Bentley from our collection. It drove here in 1929, and this is David Morrison.
Hello, David. Sanjeev.
Hi, Sanjeev.
I can't believe that I'm getting the chance to drive it.
No, you have to build up to something like this. But we've got one of the Bugattis from our collection that you can have a go at.
Oh, great. You want to drive it in, or...? Is it still just really far away? Doesn't seem to be getting any closer. Wow. I have to be honest, it's smaller than I expected.
Small but beautifully formed.
It is beautifully formed. This is the Bugatti, David.
This is a Bugatti, and what we thought you could do is you could take this up our famous test hill.
David, I think I'm ready to go.
Okay. We've just got a couple of safety requirements for you before you go up, just to make sure.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Brooklands.
Fantastic. There we go.
Official goggles to go with it.
Wow.
And while you sort those out, I'll just get a little upgrade before you head up.
Gosh, I get an upgrade as well. This is great. What? Sorry, David. What
These are the official Brooklands stabilisers for all novices on the hill.
I've done top gear. I don't think I need stabilisers, do I? Maybe just don't tell any of my friends or family about this. It's something that's really struck me today. There are all these workshops here, and they're actually still, you know, creating things, maintaining things, means it's a living, breathing museum. It's not something that's old, stuffy, and full of artifacts. And that's something that's really wonderful and utterly unique. David, that was just absolutely amazing. What an amazing experience. Thank you so much for that.
Fantastic. I'm glad you enjoyed it. You're a step closer to being able to drive this.
Well, thank you. I'm working my way towards
Still a way
it.
to go.
You know, getting to drive, you know, a classic old car and reliving one of the most fortunate experiences I've ever had. I mean, that's pretty much close to a perfect day. Thank you again so much.
You're more than welcome.
I'll race you back to the clubhouse.
Let's go. Give me a chance to get started.
Not a chance.